going on, everybody? It's the Bulls Show, aka Aidan, and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about and discussing a very key player that could ultimately determine the direction in which our future will head. He's ultimately a guy that does play center for the Chicago Bulls. Did have a little bit of a down year, but still, if you're looking at the statistics of this player, you could, I guess, argue that he's had a relatively decent season. But we'll be talking about Nikola Vucevic today and why I believe he is going to be the key and why next season is going to be very important for Nikola Vucevic and ultimately very important for the Chicago Bulls as well. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Bulls Show. Turn notifications on and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about whether or not you think Nikola Vucevic can have a strong contract season for, I guess, next season for the Chicago Bulls. Do you see him ultimately getting traded at some point throughout the season as well? I think many people have kind of died down on the fact that Vucevic should be traded or Vucevic will be traded. I think a lot of people are slowly starting to understand at this point in time that Nikola Vucevic probably won't get traded from the Chicago Bulls this season, and he's going to have a big year in order for his own career as well as for the Bulls for us to really reconsider bringing him back next year. He wants to be back here next year as well, and whether or not it's the right thing for us to do in all of those cases as well. Do we really want to bring back Nikola Vucevic next year? So many questions, not enough answers, but a lot of those answers will probably be determined by the end of next season. So we've got a lot to look forward to there. But looking at Nikola Vucevic, played 73 games. Very durable was Nikola Vucevic, arguably one of our most durable players on the team. I want to say arguably, but of course you could argue DeMar DeRozan probably was a little bit more durable. Nevertheless, his season averages was 17.6 points, 11 rebounds, 3.2 assists, shooting 47.3% from the field and 31.4% from the three-point line. At the end of the day, there were a couple of good things you saw from Nikola Vucevic, in all honesty. But this is definitely a down year for what you probably expected out of him on this Chicago Bulls team. I think many people expected him to at least go and average within the 20-point margin and be a little bit more efficient from the field. I think a center, all in all, that shot 31.4% from the three-point line when his career average is 34%. That's a little bit upsetting, and I guess you could clearly tell the frustration in which Vucevic suffered himself, and the fans kind of suffered from him as well, because he just was not making his three-point shots this year, and that was very disappointing to see. There were a couple of seasons where Vucevic actually shot 40% from the three-point line, especially in his last couple of years with the Orlando Magic. So I'm hoping next year will be a much better story in terms of that situation. At the end of the day, I don't think Vucevic not making three-pointers means he's on a decline or anything like that. But I think that's very telling of where he is at the moment, the frustrations in which the Bulls players, of the Bulls fans, I should say, have with him as well. And just a disappointing season I think he may have had. Now, again, statistics might say he didn't have a disappointing season. It was a relatively decent season. You also got to consider the fact that he's also playing with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. Both of them averaged between 24 and 28 points per game. You're not going to see Vucevic average 24 and I guess 16 rebounds or whatever it was he averaged a couple of years ago. It's just not going to happen. He's never averaged 16 rebounds. Forget what I said there. But he's not going to average 24 and 11 every single night. It's just not going to be that type of season. It's not on that type of environment where he can really do that constantly. But Vucevic does need to improve from last season heading into next season as well. There are a lot of worries with Nikola Vucevic, and I feel like many fans will be worried about Nikola Vucevic next season. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that I think can help improve Nikola Vucevic and the importance of him improving heading into next season. First things first, I think we saw how good Nikola Vucevic was towards the second half of the season when he was in the post more. Vucevic is a talented shooter. He's a talented offensive center. Most centers would kill for the talent that Nikola Vucevic currently possesses, and he's worked very hard to become a really good offensive-minded center. There are not many offensive-minded centers like Nikola Vucevic. Obviously, you got the elite of the elite, like the Nikola Jokic's and the Joel Embiid's and all of those types of players. But in terms of, I guess, the other guys around the league, Nikola Vucevic is right up there with one of the best offensive centers in the NBA today. He's had to work very hard to do that. But unfortunately, he's had a down year in a lot of areas, and the three-point line is one of them. But when we turn to the paint a little bit more, when we saw him in the post a little bit more, there was one point throughout the regular season where he led the league with most post hooks in the NBA, especially from the percentage in which he made them as well. Many people might say there were some times where he missed them, but for the majority of the time, he made those post layups, he made those post hooks, and he can extend to the three-point line. But I think the reduction of going to the three-point line and going more into the post is really what got the success out of Nikola Vucevic a little bit more. Obviously, there are certain teams where that just never happened. For example, the Milwaukee Bucks in the NBA playoffs, he's versing a relatively decent center in Brook Lopez, who's also a relatively stronger guy as well. Not really easy to bully Brook Lopez in the post. He went more to the three-point line in that series, which I think at the end of the day, we should have still went further into the paint, but that's just me. And we kind of saw, I guess, Vucevic make some of them, but also miss some of them as well. Inconsistency in Nikola Vucevic's three-point shooting, which is something we saw all season. Nothing different in the NBA playoffs as well. So I'd like to see Vucevic continue to work and go into the post. Obviously, the pick and roll and the pick and pops are something they should be working on as well. And I feel like that's where he's going to get the majority of his buckets heading into next season. And that's really all in terms of the offensive end. I honestly really thought the only down thing that he actually had was just his three-point shooting. His playmaking for a center, in my opinion, is still one of the best in the NBA. In terms of being a high IQ player and a team player, he's still right up there on this team as one of the better team players in the NBA as well. He's not a selfish guy. He's willing to get players open. He's willing to pass out from the post. He has high IQ plays in that retrospect as well. Sometimes even the shots that he takes from the three-point line are good shots that just don't fall. He does take, and in my opinion, he does make the right plays majority of the time. Offensively, I don't really have an issue with that. Defensively, coming into the Chicago Bulls team, a lot of people talked about underrated defender with Nikola Vucevic. In some instances, you saw that. Obviously, when their team was fully healthy, you got a top 5 defense and a top 5 offense, you can hide Nikola Vucevic's defensive woes a little bit more. But all of a sudden, you got Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso out. The Bulls get destroyed on pick and rolls because Vucevic is not that strong-minded of a defensive center to cover what other guys are doing. So we got smashed on the pick and rolls. But that wasn't a big issue when Lonzo was healthy. That wasn't a big issue when Caruso was healthy. But unfortunately, we didn't see that enough. And Vucevic got exposed defensively last season. I do see him as somewhat as an underrated defender in terms of being in the paint presence. I don't see him being a rim protector or anything like that. He's far from that, but he can deter shots, and he's very much plays big in the paint, in my opinion, defensively, and it shows with his rebounding as well, with 11 rebounds per game. But when it comes to pick and rolls, when it comes to positional defense and stuff like that, where he has to clear up the space, he does back off a little bit more. And it's very similar to Rudy Gobert sometimes. Rudy Gobert is always going to be that rim protector, but sometimes they play, I guess he plays his own zone. He stays in the paint because that's where his bread and butter is. Vucevic does the same. We get exposed in pick and rolls. Teams do pick and rolls more often, and it's unfortunate for Vucevic. So I do feel like a lot of those weaknesses will be, I guess, hidden once again with Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso, and hopefully even guys like Dale and Terry coming into this team. But it's still a presence where he does need to improve on it a little bit more. I'm not asking him to block every shot from a pick and roll, but maybe he does try to switch it up. Maybe you go into a double team and you double team the guy with the ball. That's something that could very much just try it here and there. We saw it towards the end of the season sometimes where we double teamed the guy with the ball in his hands, whether it's the guard or the center, we double teamed. And it kind of forced situations out of them. Sometimes you blitz the pick and roll. Sometimes you clear up the space when you know that it's not a great shooter coming off the pick and roll. Sometimes you do stand off so you don't prevent lobs. The pick and rolls, again, it's the easiest play in basketball, but it could very much be some of the hardest things to defend as well. So I think Vucevic will need to slightly get better at that. But here's why it's a big season for Vucevic. Contract season. If he has a bad year for the Chicago Bulls next year, relatively same issues, maybe even a decrease in points tally and just production overall, do the Bulls really bring him back? You could bring him back. He might even accept a very team-friendly deal like he did with the Orlando Magic, and he could get even more of a salary reduction. If he plays well, you might consider giving him a very similar, maybe even an increase in his salary if he plays really well for the Chicago Bulls team. But in my opinion, his season will determine the production, will determine the future in which the Chicago Bulls have. I can very much see Vucevic having a great season and the Bulls signing him on for another 2 years because of that season that he's going to have next season. But if he has a bad year, he doesn't perform well, bad situations, do the Bulls move on from Nikola Vucevic? Don't even look at maybe going into a sign and trade situation or anything like that. It's just bye-bye Vucevic. You just weren't good enough for the team. These are really, really interesting things. And in my opinion, that's why I feel Vucevic is the big key factor as to where the Bulls' direction will go. Do we go a little bit younger after Nikola Vucevic? Or if he performs well and he shows he still has enough in this league, do we bring him on? Do we do a sign and trade? Do we trade him during the before the trade deadline if he's not performing well as well? You got to look at all these things. And I know there'll be teams interested in Nikola Vucevic because he's on an expiring deal. I'm sure a team would be willing to take on that contract and maybe even buy him out at some stage as well. It is what it is, but you got to keep your eyes out on all single aspects. You got to keep your eyes open for all of these situations, and I'm sure the Bulls will be doing that as well. So I guess the ball is in Nikola Vucevic's court. How well is he going to play next season, and will that determine the future of the Chicago Bulls? Let me know in the comments below. But thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. Have a wonderful and safe day. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay tuned for more. Take care, and peace.